every 10 years we have a census in this country. I'm sure you conduct censuses in your country. The last one we held was in 2011. The next one will be in 2021. And there's a complicated procedure, I won't bore you with all the details, governed by a couple of statutes, including the Canada Elections Act, that decides every so often we have to reapportion the seats in the House of Commons because there's population increases. Some populations have increased. Well, all provinces have, but some have increased faster than others. And it's only fair that there be a redistribution of the seats so that the faster growing provinces are getting proper representation. However, because we're Canada, typically Canadian, we do have a procedure, and basically it goes like this. There'll be a census, get the total number, this is the number of voters, total number of people. That is sent to the Chief Electoral Officer from the Chief Statistician. He looks at the total population of just the provinces. I'll tell you in a minute, we exclude the territories in the north. There's a reason for that. There's not very many people up there, but we exclude them. Just take the total population of the provinces, and we divide it by a particular quotient, a number, so that we get an idea that the theory is that each one of these 338 constituencies should roughly have the same number of people in it, right? Only fair. And in the last election, the one we're going on, the magical number, because what they did is they took the population of Canada in 2011, divided it by the number of MPs that were in the old Parliament, which is 308, divide that, and we got a figure of around 111,000 per constituency. So in theory, if every constituency was exactly the same, it would have 111,000 people as of the 2011 census. Of course, the problem with the census is already out of date, but anyway, we have to work with the latest one we have. And so that was done. Now, the faster growing provinces is no problem. BC, Alberta, and Ontario are always fast growing. You just divide it, and they will obviously get more seats because their population's gone up. But there's a lot of provinces that don't grow as fast, or if you do the formula, they get less seats. However, we have a provision now, very simply put. No province can, doesn't matter what the formula is. I'll give you my classic favorite province is Prince Edward Island, which is the smallest province geographically and population. There's only 145,000 people there, roughly, in the last election. Well, if you divide 111, you only get 1 plus. So the Constitution says you round it up to the next. So PEI would normally only get 2 MPs. However, there's a provision that says a couple things. One is, no province can have less MPs at any time, less than the number of senators it had in 1984. And the membership of the Senate is permanently fixed. So PEI has always had 4 senators. They're entitled, so they get 4 MPs. Doesn't matter what the province is. That applies to them. There's a couple other provinces like that. There's an additional provision where even if you go up to your Senate number, you cannot have less seats than you had before. And the classic one I use is Nova Scotia. In the last election, using the fair rep by pop, Nova Scotia should have been allocated 9 MPs based on their population. But of course, they had 11 MPs in the previous Parliament. Well, first of all, since Confederation virtually, and certainly since 1984, they've always had 10 senators. So you have to give them the extra, move them up to 10. But they've had 11 MPs, and they have to be moved up. So Nova Scotia ends up getting 2 extra MPs. So Nova Scotia goes from 9 to 11. And the smaller growing provinces in that category, even Saskatchewan, Manitoba, they're only entitled to 6 senators. Saskatchewan would have only been entitled to 10 MPs, but they had 14 before, so they get an extra 4. So the problem with that, if you're mathematicians in the room, if you're apportioning it, so that means BC, Ontario, and to a lesser extent Quebec, but mostly BC and Ontario and Alberta are going to have more MPs, right? They have bigger population. But if you also increase it for the small, the problem is the House of Commons every 10 years is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's an issue they'll have to deal with. But as a result of that formula, that's why we have 338. That's, in other words, because we had to, I won't use the word fiddle, that's not fair, but we had to, there's an adjustment to adjust some of the smaller provinces to give them a little better representation, so it ends up being 3, and that's why we have 338. So each of the provinces are apportioned those. Now the next thing that happens is there's another issue about representation by population. Within a province, particularly a province, my home province like BC, Ontario too, is that you have population shifts within the province. So you have to deal with the existing boundaries. Every constituency is a geographical, physical area with a defined legal boundary. But in 10 years, it may have lost population, or it may have less population. And of course, Canada, like a lot of modern countries, is becoming more and more urbanized.